Welcome, everyone, to another review session. We're talking today about Star Trek Beyond. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, alongside John. What's up, John?
Hello, YouTube. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, indeed. I know I saw it a couple days late compared to you. Saw it. You must have seen it like either on opening night or the day after. Is that right?
Yeah, I saw it the day after opening, so didn't waste much time. But yeah.
And it's probably a good thing because I can only really convince my wife to go to one or two like opening night movies with me, and I'll probably reserve that for Suicide Squad, which is coming out this week. But back to the review. So this is spoiler review, just so you guys know. So if you haven't seen the movie, close out of that window right now because you don't want to spoil the movie for yourself. Go and watch it and then come back, and then we can talk about it. But since you saw it first, I'm going to give the mic up to you first. I want to hear what you thought about it, and then I'll go from there.
All right, cool. Well, I would say that overall it did meet most of my expectations. It's a solid film. There's not really a lot of weaknesses with it. As far as it goes, in terms of the other Star Trek films, I felt like it was actually probably the weakest out of the three so far. I think that it did a great job developing some of the characters. I loved to see a more mature version of, Kirk. I thought that was good. There's some great dynamics between Bones and Spock whenever they're on the planet. I thought that was really good. The villain was kind of boring at first. I felt like I was more interested in him as the film went on and you understood more of his reasonings. I think that he was just kind of another situation of a fairly underdeveloped villain. It seemed like, I don't know, I felt like there were moments where it was not as, I don't know, maybe it was the scenario they were in. I got kind of annoyed that within the first few minutes, the Enterprise is already defeated. It kind of reminded me of, it seems like in every one of these films, they always run into an enemy that's so overpowering and so overwhelmingly stronger than them. I was kind of disappointed about that. I would like to see them have more of a fair fight for a change, but some great characters, and really good visual effects, great soundtrack. I like their use of the Beastie Boys song, and that as they're making their way back towards the what is the name of that station? I can't remember, but anyways, it's towards the
SS
third.
Franklin.
Right. Yeah, it's in the
married to the Yorktown.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it honestly, I think just to summarize, didn't blow my mind. Didn't quite make the impression on me that the first two did, especially the original. But I liked it. Definitely just a solid Star Trek movie all the way around, and some good improvements with character development, minus the villain, obviously. And I'm hoping they are going to do a fourth one. I think they need to finish out strong. I don't know if they're contracted for any more than 3, though, some of those actors. So anyways, what did you think?
I'm going to probably surprise you and say that, heads up, it's probably a contender for my best movie of the year so far.
Really?
I'm going to lay out some things that make up why I think this.
Okay.
I have not yet this year been so, I guess, about a movie going into it. Like, the trailers didn't really do it for me. It wasn't like they were like, okay, and even the Beastie Boys were in the original trailer. I don't know if you remember, or I believe it was.
Yep.
And I was like, Fast and the Furious director. Just everything was like pointing down to me, and I'm such a big J.J. Abrams guy. I was just like, I don't know. This is probably going to be the end of a franchise which I really, really like, and I was happy to see brought back to life. And so I went to this movie, sitting there just kind of like, well, we'll see, open mind, whatever. And I left there really, really thoroughly entertained. not just because of good action scenes. It's probably one of the best 3D movies I've seen in a long time. I thought a lot of the way things they shot, where the angles, like the Yorktown, like miniature planet, the home base planet,
Hmm.
how like the gravity had different levels, and so a lot of the camera angles would do a lot of this.
Hmm.
And flip over. Really enjoyed that. I thought it played really well in 3D. I thought the CG was actually pretty good.
Hmm.
Except
Yeah.
for oddly early in the movie, a couple of shots of the Enterprise, I was like, oh, that doesn't look that good. But then it completely looked different later. So I'm not sure if they wanted to save their money. The biggest thing I will say that actually made me put this number 2 on my list out of the 3 Star Trek films. I actually think it's just behind the first one. Um, was probably be they brought back a lot of the heart that I felt like was missing, like life lessons and real emotional bonds that were just basically in the last movie they were just like romances or
Hmm.
bromances, and now they actually like meant something. Like all the scenes between Bones and Spock, I thought were really well done. All the
Hmm.
Simon Pegg again, it just absolutely kills it
Oh
in
yeah.
this movie. And I think Captain Kirk, his emotional, his turmoil within about why are we even doing this? Like, and basically, we're just going to go out into the beyond, no pun intended, for eternity. Like, are we ever going to not? Like, what's the point? We're just going and going to go. I don't understand why I'm doing this anymore. And he kind of lost himself, which at the beginning of the movie, you don't really know this. And I had the same worries you did about 3/4 of the way through the movie. I'm thinking, is this bad guy just like being bad to be bad because he's a bad guy? But then when you learn about his backstory, and this is a spoiler review, the guy's name was Crawl, and it was played by Idris Elba, which I believe wasn't he on The Office for a little bit?
Yeah, he has actually become quite a big actor. That was one of his earlier roles,
Yeah,
and then he branched out and he plays as Heimdall in the Thor movies.
yeah.
He was also in Pacific Rim as one of the lead characters, and he's done a few other TV shows, and he's got some other things coming on as well. There are even rumors of him possibly being the next James Bond, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. I think he's too old for that part, but.
I just think when I heard his story that it wasn't just a bad guy being bad to destroy humanity he basically was a soldier, that his life and the times he lived in was about conflict and becoming a better person out of conflict,
Right.
and then being left behind or feeling abandoned by Starfleet. And so that combined with all of a sudden he sees this new world of peace and harmony, and everyone thinking that that's the way to live, and it was just a different world than he was raised in. And then the whole thing where he found this alien technology to help him live longer, which is what led to the deformity in his face and his different looks. It was so interesting to me between him, and it was meant to be between him and Captain Kirk, where they both felt like out of place, out of time, and kind of questioning their motives. And I feel like that was a great motivation for a bad guy, which I think Marvel needs to take like a kind of a card out of what they did in this movie, to give a bad guy a reason to be bad, like to develop a backstory, write something good, and not just he's evil because he's a some kind of white ghost elf like in Thor 2. He's just a bad elf.
Yeah.
But the whole movie from start to finish, I felt a lot of heart. I think the humor was toned down a bit from the last movie. I think there was less like over the top humor parts and more solid sci-fi. The world was interesting that they crashed onto. I thought the set pieces were really cool. The new character, that was what was the new character's name? That the girl Sophia Botella plays Jayla, right?
Jayla, right? Yeah.
I thought she was really interesting, her backstory and how she basically was led to death, and she got away and she didn't want to help anyone, but then she learned that she could trust this new family and become a part of something again. Overall, I just left the movie feeling good and I guess entertained. And to me, that equals a success more so than going into a movie with super high expectations and then being slightly underwhelmed like I've been a couple times in the theaters this year.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think those are all good points. And I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think for me, I never felt like I felt like it slowed down a little bit in the middle. And um, with the changes that they made to some of the characters, but also the villain. I mean, I don't know. I can't even really put my finger on it exactly what it is that just didn't quite grab me. But all the characters were really well done, and the dynamics between them, the chemistry is really great. It's one of those reasons to me, that's what makes a great Star Trek film are the characters. Ultimately, even beyond the story, it's all about characters for me. So it definitely delivered in that way. I think I went into this movie with pretty low expectations because I don't know if I trust Justin Lin enough to handle a Star Trek movie, because he's only done like Fast and Furious, and those have been good, but I don't take them very seriously. Like there's not as much emotional weight with those films. Like Star Trek, the first and second one, there's actually some pretty powerful scenes. I think probably in the original film, what hit me the most was actually just whenever Kirk's father like sacrifices himself, and they go, they cut out all the sound and they just play that really sad music while he's about to give his life up, and I thought that was really cool. But I think it was everything that it needed to be a good Star Trek film. Maybe not quite what I was expecting, and that's probably why I was left a little disappointed. Like I said, I didn't really care for the villain that much, and it kind of annoyed me that within a few seconds, like they were pretty much helpless. I mean, it was almost like in the first film, they run into this hugely superior ship. They're pretty much screwed already. And then in the second film, they run into a ship that's basically a giant version of the Enterprise that almost annihilates them too. It's just so many times where our characters like probably really should have died, but they didn't, just because they got very, very lucky or something, or Simon Pegg came in to save the day. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I went into this movie a little too cynical than I should have been, or something.
I can give you some of my negatives.
Okay, yeah.
Playing off that a little bit. And it's actually playing off what you said about the ship. Very formulaic. Enterprise runs into a mean ship. Enterprise damaged. The whole crew is down. Kirk needs
to figure out a way to survive
gotta survive. They get back onto a ship eventually. They end up figuring something out, or a way to beat the guy, and then Kirk saves the day. It's kind of like, okay, I've seen this a million times before, but it felt to me like a blend between the new feeling of Star Trek, which is action and humor and all that kind of stuff that the first two movies were, with more of a blend of exploration, curiosity, and the quieter parts that you mentioned, where it kind of slowed down and got quieter, and there's more intimate scenes, reminded me a lot of the the older Star Trek movies and the TV shows, where it was about connections and learning something from all of this. That kind of made it feel like the best of an old Star Trek movie and the new Star Trek movie mixed together. That, and it had, I think, the best action scenes, probably because of the director, than any of the other ones. The great use of an idea I thought about, the whole where you could split it into like ghost copies of yourself, like the motorcycle scene and the fight scene with JLu. Basically, a million copies of Kirk biking around. And as much as I hated the first trailer with Beastie Boys, when they came flying at the ship and they turned on the music, what a great scene that was. It was a very fun scene.
It was the kind of scene that just made you grin the whole time. Like, yeah, this is a pretty cool thing that they managed to pull off. And
visually, I mean, it kicked. The colors in this movie, and I'll give them credit for this, all of the new Star Trek movies, the colors, the planets, everything like just pops. Everything just, not only in 3D aspect and good depth, and it's not just like, oh, something popping out of the screen, but good depth, but the colors and the textures all seem to kind of like pop up at you. And I really appreciate the use of color, because new worlds shouldn't all look like planet Earth, and ships shouldn't all look like one type of ship that we already have. So I like the whole like swarm of bees mentality. I thought that was really unique, and the way it looked when it was destroying ships, I thought was really cool. And when they lost their engines, like chopped them off. When he said like cut the throat, I really that was pretty like. I know you said it was formulaic as far as this it being overpowered again, but the way it did it, you really felt like, oh man, well, the Enterprise is like it's not coming back. It's not just damaged. They don't have to just fix it. Like they just got torn and they get torn the heck up.
Yeah. And I mean, the Enterprise has been destroyed many times in the Star Trek series, so it's nothing new to the series to destroy the beloved ship. And obviously, spoiler alert, they rebuild it at the end of the film, to be expected.
Yeah, well, I actually had a problem with that because at the beginning of the film they mentioned, yeah, it's the most technologically advanced ship except for the one that we're building right now. And Kirk's like, hi, and it was during that scene where he was talking about he might not want to be captain anymore. But then at the end, I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to kind of, okay, the Enterprise is done. Let's give them the new ship that's more powerful so that in the future films, like maybe they could overpower ships instead of being taken out. I thought that was a kind of a lazy, like, oh, it's just rebuilt. And they even fast forward it where it was like built in 2 seconds.
Why couldn't they like have a ship like the Enterprise Big Brother in Into Darkness? That one was massive and hugely powered. Like, why can't they take something like that into exploration? I mean, they need to be heavily defended, I think. But
I still did get goosebumps though every time, at the end where it says space, the infinite frontier, and they go and this is the Star Trek Enterprise, the Starfleet Enterprise. I mean, every time that happens, I just get like a big smile on my face because at the end of the day, I believe this movie was meant to entertain. And it was meant to further along like relationships, and I felt like at the end of the day, it did that well. Whereas some of the other movies I've seen this year, and actually some of my most anticipated movies are still yet to come. So it's probably honestly going to be surpassed by Suicide Squad. I hope DC redeems themselves, and I hope Rogue One is as good as I hope it's going to be. But for now, this is one of my favorites, probably definitely in the top 5, if not in contention for my favorites. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 7 out of 10. So still that was good, but yeah, didn't quite meet some of the expectations I had. But I mean, as a solid film for the year, very good. Probably one of the best ones, like you said, we've had this year for sure. I guess I'm just kind of wondering now, like, what do they do from here to keep from the formula getting old? Because
I think
the film's kind of
ideas from the. I think you pull a lot of ideas from the TV show. I mean, that ran forever, and every episode, and even the old movies. We have yet to see the Borg, like the full Borg. Like even though they were kind of like it was thrown around, I would like full blown Borg storyline, which is like the main storyline in all the shows. And I think a lot of the fans have wondered why we haven't gotten that yet. It seems kind of odd, doesn't it?
But I liked, one thing I liked about the original films, they tried a lot of new things. I mean, they really did. You look at episode 4, or Star Trek 4, whatever you want to call it, and it's where they're trying to get the humpback whales, remember? Yeah. And they come to Earth and all that. I thought that was a really funny twist on the normal formula. And
I think they could play with that a little bit more. I think this was
something like that. I don't know. Maybe where it's not as dire as it usually is, and maybe they can make it a little more. I don't know, but I think every Star Trek film has to have a villain. It has to have something that puts them in danger. That's just how it has to be. So I'm still looking forward to future films. Hopefully they will keep going. It's going to be tricky now because what is his name? Anton Yevon or something like that.
He died.
Yeah, he passed away, and that was like a few weeks before the film came out, and obviously I don't think I think they've already said they're not gonna do anything to keep his character in the next film, even like what some movies do. So they have to figure out something for him, and that stinks because he's a great character.
As long as Simon Pegg is on board, I'm on board for any movie that he makes.
I think he actually helped write the script, didn't he, Simon Pegg?
He did. He co-wrote and produced it.
Yeah. So I mean, props to him because he wrote some great dialogue, and
Except
I didn't realize he had that skill.
on a side note, Bones, some of the lines were a little wooden. I guess the delivery where I know his character is supposed to be a little plain, but some of them were almost like oddly or like that's an odd piece of dialogue. Like I don't understand. But I mean, overall, it was a good movie. I do want to. We're going to do some topics later this week. This is just a review for Star Trek. One, I'm going to give you a little spoiler on one of my topics I'm going to talk about later this week, John, and that is how upset one man can get when all he can read is a description of the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 trailer that was shown at Comic-Con and can't actually watch it when every single person who saw it said it was the greatest thing that they've ever seen at Comic-Con. It was just amazing, and everyone needs to see it. And then James Gunn is just like, nope, not going to see it for at least a couple months. And then he came out and said there's a good likelihood it's going to be attached to some Marvel film that's coming out this year, Doctor Strange. But that's going to be a topic coming up here. That's just a little hint for my topic. But yeah, thanks for reviewing it for me. Any last thoughts there?
Not really. I guess great film. Enjoyed it. I kind of wonder, like, honestly, I'm a little worried that there's not enough like great movies coming out for the rest of the year. So I'm kind of worried about. I think that was one thing I was a little bummed about going into this. I was like, man, is Star Trek Beyond going to be one of the last good films of this year before like Suicide Squad and Rogue One and Doctor Strange? And then the two trailers that they released, the Justice League and Wonder Woman, neither of those films are coming out this year, right? It's next year.
Yeah, all next year.
Yeah, it's interesting that they already put the trailers out for those, but Marvel won't do anything for Guardians of the Galaxy yet.
It's because they don't need to. DC's on the rebound. They need to show.
Yeah, DC's trying to sell them worthwhile. Are we going to talk about that? You think the trailer
later this week? Glad there's plenty of Comic-Con trailer talk.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. But yeah, man.
All right, man. Well, thanks guys for stopping by, and as always, we'll see you at the movies.
And live long and prosper.